Hey you guys, it's Peter, and welcome to my channel, Peterisms, where I tell stories of my life and just little things that I have learned as I have grown into the person that I am today. And a happy October 1st. I brought with me the usual suspects today, the Melody Beatty books, and then I also brought the Linda Picone, the Daily Book of Positive Quotations, and then I also brought A Time to Be Free, Daily Meditations for Enhancing Self-Esteem. So, who is this one by? It doesn't say the author on the front of it. It says, by the author of A Day at a Time and a New Day. Who is, I guess it's just an anonymous author. It doesn't say on here. Well, let's read from this one then today, since this is totally a mystery. October 1st. Let's get right into this. A new month. Halloween month outside. All right. October 1st. When I think about the destructive power of my addictions and obsessions, this scene from a movie sometimes comes to mind. A man is trapped in a small room with no exit. The walls, which are studded with sharp spikes, are inching ever closer. For half my life, I was a prisoner of alcoholism. As my disease progressed, my cell grew smaller, and my awareness of the outside world diminished. I all but missed 2 decades of social, economic, and political change. Each year, my circle of friends and possible rescuers grew smaller. At the end, my every thought centered around drinking, getting through a hangover, getting out of trouble, getting money to drink some more. My world has opened wide since then, but it quickly closes in again when I become obsessed with something. I lose the freedom to think about anything else, to look elsewhere, to move about. When an obsession begins to take hold, I try not to waste time, willing or wishing it away. I turn to God, to the power that freed me from the confinement of my addictions. He restores me to sanity and gives me back my freedom. Thought for today. When I become obsessed, I lose my freedom. It's an interesting meditation, and it's making me think about the early days of sobriety for me, and the months leading up to it as well. And I think back about the months leading up to me getting sober, and that's very much how it was for me. It just was, every day was about the drinking, and I don't really even, I look back on that, I don't even really know how I functioned. I had dropped out of school, and for a while, it's so weird, like I would go to school as if I was still going to school, but I wasn't in any classes. And I had a very dear friend of mine who I drank with a lot, and she was sitting there one day and we were talking, and she was getting ready to go to classes, and she knew that I had dropped out of my classes, and she was like, why are you here? And I was like, what do you mean? And she was like, I mean, you're not going to any classes. She was like, why are you here? And I think like it was part for me to keep up this facade at that time that I actually had kind of some purpose in my life other than just drinking and using and going out. And I really didn't, And I think like the hardest days for me were the days that they weren't like weekend days that we would go out. I mean, by that point I was going out Wednesday through Sunday, and but on those like Monday and Tuesday, it was hard for me because there was really nothing to do. There was like no social activities. My friends all had jobs or were going to school, and so I was just sitting at home, and I really wouldn't see anybody. And then my days kind of turned into weeks like that at the end, where I just didn't see people days on end. And it was really just about the drinking and the obsessiveness of drinking, and that's what we talk about in recovery, is that it's not so much about the drinking, it's about the obsessive thinking of the drinking, that 1 is too many and 1,000 is never enough. And you become kind of obsessed with trying to control it or trying to do this. And, I did a lot of that at the end. I was always trying to control my drinking to some degree, because there was that moment between being like super buzzed and then blacking out. There was like a kind of a plateau in there that was where I like to stay, but I could never control it. I never, was able to control that. But, for me, when I hear stories from people that say, like, I lost decades, of years of not having relationships with family members, and I lost this and I lost that. To me, even though in all reality, I started drinking at a very young age, and I got sober at a young age, so there was like 10 years in there that I drank consistently. But like in the end of middle school and high school, I still had friends that I did things with. I still was interactive with my family members. It wasn't like I was completely shut out. And there was a lot of those nights and a lot of those moments that I didn't drink or use at all. Many nights, that wasn't part of what my life was like. It was more after I got an apartment of my own that my addiction just like, boom, it took off. And it was like, I mean, it was a monster of itself at that point. Or, you know, like, just, it was out of control. And so, because I had the ability, you know, I had a fake ID, so I could buy whatever alcohol I wanted to, and then I could just sit in my apartment, and I would have people over there. The majority of my friends were older anyway, and that was really where the other substances came into play as well. And I didn't have really any accountability to anybody, and I had my own place, and it didn't matter what time I got up or anything like that, you know? And I just, but I'm thankful. Because so really for me, it was 18 to almost, it was 22 and a half, you know, that I really lost, I think. But, and what a trade-off, you know, what is that? You know, 4.5 years that I traded off to have just this life beyond my wildest dreams as a result of my recovery. But, you know, for friends of mine, and like my mom would talk about this too, she'd say, you know, like, I feel like I've lost just like an entire part of my life to drinking, you know? And I think often for people that get sober a little bit older, that's how they get really jaded, is like, okay, so now I'm gonna be sober and I'm not gonna have the enjoyment of alcohol and other substances to enjoy the rest of my life. But at the same time, it's like, I've already lost a lot of my life. I've already hurt a lot of relationships, and it's hard to kind of like rectify that, I think, in their minds, you know? But then you come back and it's like all those relationships kind of like turn around, hopefully rather quickly. I mean, I have friends of mine that have been sober 20, 30, 40 years and their kids still won't talk to them. And it's like, no matter. And to me, I look at them as like absolute role models, you know, and pillars in the community, like just men and women who just, to me, I've always known them to be such people of strength and, you know, inner calm and peace. But like, their kids and their family members and ex-spouses still remember that, and some of their same spouses still remember them causing such harm, you know, 30, 40 years ago, that they haven't really let go of that. You know, and interestingly enough, like in talking to my dad, you know, I've been sober 26 years and 9 months, and in talking to my dad, like, I wouldn't say every conversation, but I'd say like maybe every fourth or fifth conversation, something will come up where I'm like, yeah, this is a response to who I was 26 years ago, you know, like it's still there in his head. And, you know, to this day, my dad is, I mean, my cousin Caroline and I really, like, we were cousins back then. We definitely weren't as close then as we are now, by any means. And she was in college, away from school. She was at Ball State at the time that I was like drinking and using the heaviest. So we didn't see each other except for holidays. So other than my dad and my stepmom, my cousin is the only other person still around that really knows me from back then. I mean, friends of mine from high school and college and stuff, but there's only 2 or 3 that I actually talk to on any kind of regular basis. And by that might be once or twice a year at most. So, you know, like, my dad is the only person that is still, to this day, alive that was directly affected by my using. And I think about that sometimes, you know, it's like that ripple effect that still happens all these years later. And it's scary because, like, in my head, I can still see that person that, you know, just was not a good person, would not get out of bed, didn't really care about other people, didn't really care if I was affecting other people, didn't believe I was affecting other people, you know? And I can see that person in my head, and it's like, that's why and that person wasn't always drunk. That person always wasn't high, you know, but that person was destructive. And I look at that in my head and I think I don't ever want to go back to that again, right? And that's the disease of addiction. That's why I don't pick up today and use, because I'm scared of that, you know. And I've had friends of mine that have double-digit years of sobriety that pick up after they've been sober for 20 years and literally go right back to who they were 20 years ago within like 2 to 3 weeks, you know? And I'm like, God, that's terrifying to me, to think that I could go back to, like, I mean, in my head as I'm telling this story, I see myself in my apartment then, and I can see myself weaving around the apartment, pouring myself a drink in the kitchen, sitting smoking a joint on the couch, you know, eating pills, like crushing pills up and snorting them. Like, I can see that in my head as I'm telling the story, like it was yesterday. And even though, like, I consciously know that it was so long ago, the fear inside of me of who that person was and how I ever got there or ended up there to begin with, it's like, it's so counterpart to, like, I sat today and I like filmed this video of my front porch and I was like arranging mums and I was so excited to get the new pumpkin and stuff. And like, that person was always present, The way that I explain it is that I feel like when you become really active in your addiction, it's like you're going down this road. Like if I was going to drive to like Las Vegas or something, and I'm out in the middle of nowhere, right? And I'm driving down this road, and I can, you know, see this plateau mountain in the distance, and to my right and to my left are just like desert, you know, and wilderness. And if I keep on going straight, I'm going to hit my destination. But somewhere along the line, I veer off and I start walking, you know, out into the desert and the wilderness. And maybe I go like this, and, you know, and eventually I get back on the road. And that's when I get sober, is I'm back on the road and I'm back on my journey and I'm going the way that I'm supposed to, right? But it's like the journey never stopped. I just took like this path off into the woods, off into this wilderness that was scary, and, you know, and just all this craziness was happening out there and I didn't know where I was. But the reality is I don't get back on the road exactly where I did before. I missed a lot. And that's what this person is talking about, that you miss a lot out there, right, while you're using. So you get back on the road, down the road, but like you've missed all of this. All of this has been in the wilderness. You don't remember a lot of it. You know, you're going through the middle of the night and things are scaring you, and you're a different person when you're in the desert versus being on the road. You know, and I've always kind of thought of it that way, you know, and so it's my choice whether or not I go off that road again, and I don't want to. I'm too afraid, you know, of what that will hold for me if I go off the road. And I think that's where, like, I used to get a lot of questions from people when I would tell my story that would say, you know, like, well, I'm in recovery too, or I'm just getting sober, and what can I do this? Today, I would say I get a lot of questions from people that are family members and friends and say, how can I be supportive of people? And I think it's important for you to know that there are sister programs, you know, for people that go to 12-step meetings. There's Al-Anon, there's Nar-Anon, that are 12-step programs that you work on for yourself to learn how to work on how you respond to addicts and alcoholics in your life. There are people that have been going to Al-Anon for 20 and 30, 40 years that they're no longer even with the person that they were with that was alcoholic to begin with. They're not, like, their parents have passed away, but they still are active in that because who they are inside is the person that responds to that. And that's how we work on that. Just like with my mom, you know, it's like, I respond probably to other alcoholics or just in life in general to people the same way that I responded to my mother growing up. And a lot of that is based in fear. And I talked about fear the other day, you know. So things I've had to learn is how to set limits and boundaries with toxic people, healthy boundaries with toxic people. And that's been really, really important for me, you know, where there's those moments where I'm like, no, like, let's do this, let's do that. And then I'm like, this person is not healthy for you. You know, I set a healthy boundary with this person, you know, and it doesn't mean that you don't love that person. It doesn't mean that you don't care about that person. It just means that maybe that person's not healthy for you in your life, you know, and that can be parents, and that can be, you know, family, friends, you know, coworkers, people that you know through social situations, on and on and on. And so, you know, like, those are things that I've had to learn, and those are things that we learn in 12-step programs that are, you know, related, that are sister programs to 12-step programs. Other ways are by getting in counseling yourself, you know, and other ways, depending on how close you are to the alcoholic or the addict. The other thing to do is ask the person, what do you need from me? What can I do to be supportive of you, you know? There are things that we can do that I think most people, they either don't want to do it or they don't think that it makes much of a difference. That's like having, you know, like, having alcohol in your house. When I was in early sobriety, I would say that first year or two, I could not have alcohol in my house. I mean, for me, it was like, I mean, we talk about later that, you know, we are repulsed from alcohol like a hand on a hot flame. And that's how I feel today, but I didn't feel that way my first 2 years. You know, I could see a bottle of alcohol or beer or a glass of wine or whatever, and it would, like, my mind would start spinning. I don't feel that way today as long as I'm taking my medicine, and my medicine is going to meetings, working with a sponsor, doing service work, on and on and on, helping others. So, you know, and most of my friends today, like, you know, it's funny when I get the questions and people will be like, well, Alex drinks, or there's alcohol in your house or whatever. It's like, most of my friends, it's the same situation, you know, like, their partners drink, or there's alcohol in their house and things like that, you know, and it's not that big of a deal once you've been sober for 20 or 30 years. But yes, I still do have friends of mine that have been sober that long, and they are that rigid about things. I choose not to be. But I think that's a question to ask somebody in early sobriety. But I also had to tell people, like, I'm not comfortable coming to your house if there's going to be alcohol there. I'm sorry. I'm not comfortable. One of the things that was hardest for me, and I never thought it would be, is people, and it wasn't just the smell of a pot, it was people that that got high and then I would interact with them, it made me real uncomfortable because I could tell that they were. And so I knew we weren't both like sober-minded in that moment, and I just didn't like it. It's just not comfortable. To this day, I don't love it. I don't love interacting with people that are high. It's just not comfortable for me. You know, it's just not enjoyable for me. And those are things that make me feel safe, you know? And so I think if you're a family member or a friend asking somebody in early sobriety, what makes you feel safe? What can I do in my home to make you feel comfortable and make you feel safe? But ultimately, at the end of the day, it's the addict and alcoholic's responsibility, you know, to do that. Because we don't want them to miss out on any more time. We don't want to miss out on any more time with them, right? But they also have to do the work. You know, I had to do the work for myself, and other alcoholics and addicts have to do the work themselves. This is why we talk about being programs of attraction, right? You know, it's why I had to pick up the phone and ask my sponsor to be my sponsor. I didn't go up to her. She didn't come up to me and say, I'm going to be your sponsor, you know? And that's why there were certain things that my sponsor made me do when I sat down with her. You know, she was like, qualify to me why you believe that you have a problem drinking and using, you know? She wanted to hear it from me. She didn't want to put it on me. She wanted me to be responsible for my own recovery and addiction. And there's a lot of those things that we do, you know, and it's been really hard. There's been some people that I've asked to be my sponsor through the years, and it's been really, really hard to pick up the phone and actually call them or ask them or see them in person. But that's the action steps to recovery that people do. Those are the things that, as crazy as it sounds, those are the things that really like get you further sober, you know, because those are the things that are sometimes the hardest to do. And when you talk about the 400-pound phone, that's hard to pick up when we want help from somebody. You know, I didn't have that hard of a time picking up that phone when I wanted something from somebody to use, you know, as far as a substance, like a dealer or something like that, or a friend of mine that I knew had something that I wanted to use. I didn't have a hard time picking up that phone at all, but man, get me sober and have it be that I'm just craving and pick up a phone to call somebody and be like, hey, I need some help. That's a hard phone call to make, you know? So I think to, you know, be supportive of other people is to create safe environments for them, however that means, you know, whatever that means to them. And also be supportive of them and whatever they ask, you know? I can remember back in the day, people would say to me, you know, my wife just got sober, you know, like 2 weeks ago and got out of treatment. Does that really mean that, you know, I can't have any beer in my refrigerator? She asked me not to have any beer in my refrigerator. I can't believe I can't have a beer in my own house because my wife went to treatment. And I'm like, well, I mean, if a beer is that big of a deal with you and your wife just got out of treatment 2 weeks ago, you might want to check your own substance abuse issues. I'm just saying, you know. But so it's creating those safe environments for people and asking them what they need as well, right? So anyway, but I am a believer. I really am a believer, and I know that a lot of people won't like this. I mean, as alcoholics and addicts, we can get sober in the hardest of conditions if we really want it bad enough. We have to do the work, though. We really have to do the work. So anyway, let me know what you think about that meditation. I didn't think I'd go for that long in that meditation. And I don't talk about recovery and addiction over here as much as I used to, and I miss it, kind of. So maybe I'll do some more dedicated meditation. I just flipped my hair. Did you see that? Flipped my hair. Maybe I'll do some more kind of dedicated videos to recovery over here if you guys would enjoy that. Let me know in the comment section below. I hope you guys are having a beautiful Friday. I love you, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye.